You're listening to Not the Top 20 podcast. We're getting super excited for the EFL Play-Off finals this weekend. This part of our wide-ranging preview coverage thereof. George and myself will be at Wembley for all three, with around 200,000 others drinking it in live, the agony and the ecstasy. But millions of others will be at home watching Sky Sports coverage of all three as well. Sunderland, Sheffield United, Charlton, Leyton Orient and Walsall, Wimbledon. Now, I reckon, George, that 95% of people listening to this will have grown up wanting to be either a professional footballer and or a football commentator. And when you dream of that when you're growing up, you think of the big occasions, cup finals and playoff finals as well. So we've got two key members of the Sky Sports team with us who have lived and are indeed living our dreams and can tell us all about those things. Curtis Davis, first and foremost, how are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you. We're in the right time of the season. We're at a fun end, so I'm good to go.
Good, mate. Well, it's only a couple of weeks ago that we were at the EFL Awards. You won the Sir Tom Finney Award, which goes to someone who made an outstanding contribution to football and to the EFL through their playing career, which I know from speaking to you on the night was something that, you know, meant a huge amount to you.
It did. I'm not sure if it's the award for someone that hung around a bit too long, to be honest. But no. All jokes aside,
that makes sense that Joby won it.
No, all jokes aside. Listen, I was very humbled and very honoured because, you know, the EFL, how many people playing in across the three leagues, and you know, like I said on the night, I gave everything to the game. That's why I played until I was 39, coming back from 3 Achilles injuries and everything that's happened throughout my career, the ups and downs. But yeah, my story was unique to me, but I'm just glad that others have seen it as something that commended with an award, basically.
We've only got Gary Weaver with us as well, Sky Sports commentator, one of the most recognisable voices across EFL football. How are you?
All right. I feel guilty because all I've done this morning is eat, and that is it. But Curtis
what have you eaten?
Mate,
because you had when we first joined the call, you had a huge wok behind your head. So I'm interested to know if you've been. It's only 10:15.
Mate, I've actually had sausages dipped in honey this morning, mate.
Wow.
A new thing. I grew up in Anfield and I never grew up eating sausages dipped in honey, but I thought I'd go for that this morning, boys.
We're going to start calling him Gourmet Weaver rather than Gary Weaver, because he's changed. He's totally changed. He's gone.
I know.
It's pretty perfect, because some of what we want to hear from you guys today is about the preparation that you have to put in for your current role. It's the preparation for being for Curtis as a player, you know, we're always told about cold pasta in the mornings before a lunchtime kick-off, and you're shoveling it down because you need that slow release energy for the game. Gary Weaver, none of that. Just sausages dipped in honey, please.
I know, mate. It was a mistake, really, but I've made the most of it. But
did it taste good?
It was good. And actually, you know, I was going to say to you, the first time I met Curtis properly, he was sat on a horse dressed as a knight at Warwick Castle in the summer. And I thought to myself, what has happened to him? And then they said, we're doing a promo and you're here to commentating on him jousting for the promo for the season ahead. So, that was the first time I met Curtis. He was dressed as a knight, sat on this big horse at Warwick Castle. Like, what are you doing, mate?
I've always been very regal, so, it's just...
elegance, great.
When you're into live action role play, you don't expect to go to a recreation of a big battle and see someone from work. You're trying to get away from the people at work, I think.
It was an odd yet brilliant day.
Yeah, excellent day,
my
actually.
experience.
You a good horseman?
Do you know what? Actually, I knew how to ride the horse. Yeah, so I wouldn't call myself a horseman, but I can do a little trot on a horse just because
nice.
My oldest daughter, when I used to live in Hull, a friend of ours had horses and had a yard basically, and she used to go horse riding. Sometimes they say, "Oh, why don't you get on the big horse and go trotting around the field?" So I knew how to handle the horse, but obviously having not done it for about 8 years, when you get on the sides of the horse was its back was as tall as me. So obviously I'm getting up there and I'm thinking, this is a long way down, and obviously I'm trying to do the bits for the camera whilst, you know, they're tugging away at it and trying to get it to look at the camera, and I'm like trying to do my bit where I'm pretending to get the text, and I'm like, oh, don't fall off. So, and then I've got Weaves hammering me in the background as well with his commentary. So
I like the idea that you sent Sky, you know, when you hung up your boots, you sent Sky a CV, and on your CV in chess it said horse riding. They were like, you know what? Here we go. This is an idea.
So you always have to pad the CV, and unfortunately that won't come back to bite me.
Well, that's where Prutz has on his CV, I really like British comedy, particularly like Peep Show, Mitchell and Webb look. I can do any impressions of Gervais, of David Mitchell. That's where we got that famous promo on the pitch at Pride Park just a few months ago. You guys do, you genuinely, and you know, George and I were very privileged to be part of the Sky Sports EFL team for a couple of years, and so we know this firsthand. But even in the last couple of seasons where we've not been so involved, like the promos that you guys do around Christmas time, pre-season, it I think is a really nice reflection to everyone else of what we know to be true, which is like it's a real tight-knit team that you have, not just the guys that we hear and that we see, but also the production team as well.
Yeah, and you know what? It's they who come up with those ideas. So we just get told, off you go there. I mean, I thought Curtis was brilliant in was that the Christmas one, the Home Alone one?
Home Alone, yeah.
Curtis. Yeah, and Hendo and Prutz. I mean, it was great. But yeah, the one that Prutz did walking around Pride Park, I mean, the pitch wasn't great anyway, was it, at Derby? It got even worse after he was treading on it for about a day, by the looks of it. But yeah, no, you're right, Ali. The staff that we have behind the scenes, I mean, you know, I know you go on to it with that Sunderland goal the other night, and people were saying that, you know, you left it and you left the scenes. It's the camera crew, it's the director, it's the noise, it's everyone else that plays a massive part in everything. And you boys have seen it all, you know. Yeah,
well, let's talk about that moment, because I think we have to come to you here, Gary, about that incredible. I mean, like a lot of famous playoff moments over the years, and I guess some of them maybe more dramatic in terms of, you know, you'd think of the Deeney goal, but in terms of pure noise and the outpouring of emotion that came from the Sunderland fans with that ridiculous header from Ballard, where he seemed to jump about a minute early and therefore had to fold his whole body in order to contort to head it in the back of the net. And often, you know, commentators often get praised for their words, but on this occasion, you were praised, and as you said, maybe slightly out of character, for not saying anything and for letting the Sunderland fans do the work. Was that a conscious decision on your part to just let the sound of the crowd and the smacking of the advertising hoardings do the talking for you?
It was. Look, I've kind of done it before because, I mean, obviously, first of all, you need the goal, then you need the noise. The shots are a massive thing. The camera crew getting those amazing shots, and the director, Doc as we call him, Steve Livesey, he's brilliant because he, you know, you've seen it in action. He's got about 20 odd screens to cameras to look at, and he's cutting different shots. We don't need to say anything. I think I did similar when Ipswich Southampton last season when Sarmiento scored that late goal, and I just shut up. And because the noise does take over. My mate sent me a text afterwards going, "That's the best bit of commentary you've ever done when you shut your mouth for a bit." I went, "Oh, cheers, pal. Cheers, lad." But no, it does, because the noise is phenomenal, isn't it? And I looked at, do you know what? It's funny because I've got Don on my left, and then Joby was there next to Don Goodman on Don's left, and I just turned around, and Joby's face will live with me because Joby's eyes was wide open, his jaw had dropped just because of that moment. And sometimes you put your hand across as if to say, "Don't come in, just let the noise go." And like I say, you need the goal, you need the noise, you need the shots. We don't need to do anything; just let people hear that noise, because it was unbelievable.
And when you have a moment like that, and this will happen in the finals as well, by their very nature, when you have the ecstasy, and clearly that is initially the most important thing, but part of your role is to make sure that you are representing how everybody's feeling, and that includes the team that have just conceded and whose season is ending. At what point do you have to kind of calm yourself down, and do you do a specific shift of tone to then try and reflect what it means for Coventry City, for Frank Lampard? Or do you have to be led by the shots there as well, where you probably can't...
I think it's pretty much the shots, Ali, because you're there thinking, I mean, the shots were unbelievable. Like I say, the noise, the shots, that's all you needed. And then I think the shot, they went on to Matt Grimes, who's holding his head, I think. And then I think I did it more on Sunderland. And then, then you've got to say what it means, because obviously there's two sides to the story. But yeah, I mean, you just go with the flow. I mean, the scenes that obviously, I don't know if you've seen the gantry at Sunderland, so it's kind of quite low. So it's at the top of the first tier. So you got fans in front of you, and you got fans in the boxes behind you who are banging those advertising hoardings. A lot of the time, Steve Cram, by the way. sits in the box behind us.
Class.
So that's the noise you can hear. But I had a fan, he nearly jumped on me. He climbed up on the railing and was right in front of me with his arms just going mad. And I was kind of holding him back, like, because he was nearly on top of us all. And he came up to apologise at the end. But I mean, you just literally, I'm doing what you're doing. I'm looking at the scenes because I'm just like, wow. And in my head, I'm saying obviously a lot of things in my head.
Always.
Yeah. And then just leave it. But then, like you say, then you got to reflect on the other side of the story, because for Coventry, that's your season. Everything gone with one movement of a head, which is unbelievable, really.
How much, I mean, commentating on those games compared to league games, how different is it? Because, you know, it feels like sometimes in league games, the drama it's immediate, but then actually there's a bigger picture, whereas the picture, I guess, in the playoffs is so incredibly small. Like that is it, and the prize is much bigger than 3 points.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and that's why, again, I mean, the noise is always great in the Stadium of Light, but it went up a few notches, didn't it? Because simply what it meant, the timing of the goal, you know, penalties were avoided because Sunderland had missed their last 4 penalties, hadn't they? Coventry, obviously, we know their history in the Championship playoff final with the penalties, so there's relief in there. But yeah, it's everything just on that, and that's why it's so much bigger than a cup game, a cup final, isn't it, really, and cup semi-finals, because this is it. Your season's gone. Everything you work for is over if this moment doesn't happen. And that's why, you know, but you've obviously got to remember there's another game. I know there were a few who suggested Sunderland maybe over-celebrated, and you're there thinking, well, hang on. The timing of the goal, the relief not to go to penalties, the fact to go into Wembley, this, that and the other, allowed them to celebrate, I think. And it's all because of that. And that's why these playoffs are just incredible, aren't they? They are really incredible and fantastic for us to be a part of, no matter what the level. It's huge. It's everything. And that's why I treat every game like it's a World Cup final. And, you know, sometimes I get a little bit told off for that. Time could be too Hollywood, I know. But to me it is, because it's the game I'm doing, and you know the feeling of the fans involved, you know, and the clubs involved. I'll just tell you very quickly as well, the shot we didn't put out because we didn't get a chance, Coventry had just written their penalty takers. So we got the shot, and obviously sometimes we'll record it and they'll put it out in a couple of seconds, you know, it's as live, if you like. And then the move happened for the corner, and then the goal. So Joe Edwards had just finished writing the Coventry penalty takers, and then obviously had the pen snatched from him and the dream snatched from them.
There you go. So Sunderland at Wembley, they play against Sheffield United. The reason we can't have a 15-minute chat about iconic commentary from their semi-final is because it went very differently. A 6-0 aggregate win, 3-0 in both legs. I mean, Curtis got plenty of experience of, I imagine, heading into big games in good form, in bad form, feeling confident, feeling a little less confident. And when it comes to the playoffs, like the discourse around it, every playoff preview, people want to know who's got the momentum, who will have the confidence, and they really attribute a lot of their predictions, for example, to like what they think the players will be feeling psychologically. And George and I are always quite sceptical about the fact that, like, for example, Sheffield United have a terrible playoff history. They've never won in the playoffs, and so for the fans that matters a lot. And of course, it's at the forefront of their mind. But I find it always difficult to imagine that when you're stepping out on the pitch and you're getting ready to play the biggest game of the season, I just find it hard to believe that you are going to be performing hugely differently than you otherwise would have because of the weight of history and how the fans feel about that.
Yeah, I think, touching on that straight away, you know, it's a different group of players. This is history, of course, and it's history for a reason. History, you know, we can say, Manchester United were winning the league in the 90s. They're not now. So it doesn't really, you know, it's history as a group of players. You're going out there, you don't care who you're playing, you're going out there to win the game and get the job done, get to the Premier League. And I think I think the way I describe it is recently with these kind of games, of course, the fans do have that stress. The fans have the stress. They have the memories because they've been there. They've been in the stands and watched them lose at Wembley a lot of times, watched them lose playoff campaigns a lot of times. But as a player, like I say, I can go back to playing against Arsenal in the FA Cup final as an example. Whilst Arsenal were the more favoured team and everything like that, you go there and you're focused on winning. Hull had never won an FA Cup. Arsenal had won 14, I think, at the time. But history meant nothing to me. It meant I'm just going to go, whoever's in front of me, I'm going to go through them and I'm going to go try and win the game. And I think that's what the players will do. And I think going back to their semi-final and the way that it unfolded, what Weaves was saying there about, did Sunderland over-celebrate? I don't think they over-celebrated because, like I say, that joy, that relief, that combination of everything in once put into that cauldron of the Stadium of Light was mad. So you're going to react to feel around you. So I don't blame them for the way they celebrated. But the energy and the exhaustion around the way that it happened sometimes is a bit much. Whereas Sheffield United were very much calm, composed. With all due respect, the tie was done after the first leg. So when the end of their game comes and they've won 3-0 again, all they're doing is doing their lap of honour, very unemotional, because it's their last game at home, waving to the fans with their kids and going down a tunnel. So I think, not to say it shouldn't make a difference, but I think, like I say, I think Sheffield United have got that kind of comfortability over emotion in check, basically.
Then at the same time, it is quite a long time between the semi-finals finishing and the finals starting. That's always an interesting feature, I think, is that outside of international breaks, it's probably the longest time you have between games in a hectic championship schedule. So how do you actually time it all well to get your recovery in and rest and presumably try and switch your brain off a little bit? But then at what point in the week do you have to start getting bang at it, but make sure you're not overdoing it ahead of Saturday?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of that emotion, as much as in their legs they had 120 minutes of football, if the game was on Saturday, I think they would have been right up for it because of that feel that they had. But the fact that that emotion is now going to calm down to the following Saturday, in terms of, always depends on managers. I know Reggie Labrie is meant to be a really good coach, a really intense coach, very tactical. I don't know whether he's the type that would give his lads 3 or 4 days off. I don't know that. Whereas I know, for instance, going to League One, Richie Wellens gave the lads, I think, 4 or 5 days off. Because his idea was, if they're not fit now, they're never going to be fit. And if I have them in every day, reminding them of how important this game is, tactics, by halfway through the week, they're going to be burnt out, let alone by the game. So his idea was, let them clear their heads, let them enjoy a bit of time with their family, let them sort the tickets, whatever else they need to do. But when they come back in on the Monday, the Tuesday, whenever it is, they're fully focused. So different managers have different ways of doing it. I imagine most will have given their team a break because, again, just being in the building for 10 days in a row can be a bit much at times. But sometimes managers overthink things and think, well, if I do give them too much time off and we do potentially lose, then it's on me. So it's a conundrum, but I think the main thing is a confident manager will always back his ways and back his team because they've got themselves here over, as we say, 48 games. They're not going to let themselves down going into the final hurdle.
Curtis, interested to get your thoughts, especially given you played in the whole 1-0 win over Sheffield Wednesday. But if you look at kind of recent history of the playoff final in the Championship, which we know is, you'll struggle to find a game of more importance to a club in world football effectively because of what it brings to the fans and the life-changing money to the club and what it can do to a player's career to play in the Premier League. But if we start from 2013, the scorelines have been a 1-0 win to Palace over Watford, a 1-0 win for QPR over Derby, 2-0 win for Norwich over Borough, that 1-0 game win for Hull over Sheffield Wednesday. Huddersfield Reading was the 0-0 draw, one of the worst games of football anyone's ever seen. Fulham 1, Villa 0. Villa 2, Derby 1, so that has 3 goals in it. Fulham 2, Brentford 1, but was 1-1 at half time. 1-1 at full time before extra time. Brentford 2, Swansea 0. Forest 1, Huddersfield 0. Luton 1, Coventry 1. Saints 1, Leeds 0. These games are low scoring, low margin. From a player's perspective, does that make sense? Do you step out on that pitch with a kind of defensive-minded, take no risk strategy because whether you've been told by your manager or not, that the aim of the game is not to make mistakes rather than to kind of throw everything forward?
Yeah, I'd have to say that's a big factor, and particularly being a defender, it's quite easy for me as well then because I get to boss people around and keep them in front of me rather than having them running here, there and everywhere. But yeah, it very much is naturally, don't make a mistake, don't give their fans, especially when 40-odd thousand fans from each group are going along, don't give them anything to sing about to start because the second momentum goes in that kind of place, like I say in Wembley, the noise is fantastic. So I think you stop that noise first and foremost, ease your way into the game, and then once all the kind of nerves and that nervous energy around your team starts to go, then you start to show your quality. And I think that was a similar thing with us against Sheffield Wednesday. When we played them, we were favourites. We started off the game quite easy, and then I felt that even though we only won the game 1-0, it was one of the most comfortable 1-0s I'd played in. Obviously, it took a Diarmi weldy, but there were a couple of chances. Maybe Abel Hernandez could have put away earlier, Moses Odebejo. So it could have been a bit more comfortable. So it's just one of those. But when that does happen, then those chances don't go. It's down to me and my partner beside me, Dorse, to stop anything happening our end. It's always a case of... Yeah,
you had a decent left back as well, didn't you?
He was all right. Yeah.
Where's he gone?
I don't remember what happened to him, but he was a good lad, to be fair. No, but listen, we had a great team, and Andy Robertson. I personally think as well, and I've always said this: Moses Odebejo, if he hadn't had the knee injury at the start of the next season, I think he would have had a similar trajectory. I think he would have done the Nathaniel Klein type route, where maybe have gone to a mid Premier League team from Hull and then gone to a top team. But unfortunately, listen, he's still playing now. He's brilliant. He's recovered his career. He's playing in Greece. But yeah, that team we had, Diarmi, what a player. We had a midfield three of Diarmi, Huddleston and Livermore in the Championship. That's ridiculous. Snodgrass playing for us. Harry Maguire was on the bench.
Should have had automatic then, shouldn't you?
We should have, yeah, but yeah, we just wanted it the exciting way. But when you talk about these games and being on a knife edge and being so tight, all I can say is, yes, we wanted automatic promotion. Of course we did. But once we get to the playoffs, whilst, with all due respect, Sheffield Wednesday were hopeful, we were expectant because we had just been relegated from the Premier League, having had 2 years up there. We were in the top two around late February, early March, and we fell away from it. So we knew we'd let ourselves down, and we knew that if we don't go up, this group's going to get broken apart and we might not have another chance. And that was a big thing. So when that final whistle goes, whilst we're talking about Ballard and that ecstasy and that, oh my God, what a moment, the first thought in my head was relief. Honestly, it wasn't happiness, it was relief. It was relief, yes, we've done it, oh my God, thank you. And then I'm going around and I'm composed and I'm shaking their players' hands because I know what they're going through. I've not played in one where we've lost, but I've been injured for the Derby one and for the West Brom one against Derby. So it was difficult for me to take, even though I didn't play. So those players that spent all that emotion on the pitch, I wanted to show them some support. Sorry.
And Gary, just I'm not going to push you guys for any sort of predictions because you don't need that from me, and certainly from a commentator's point of view, I know having met a lot of you guys that sort of thing, it's not necessarily what you want to be putting out there because you can cause more grief for yourself than is necessary. But
yeah,
I suppose that part of your preparation for every game, but particularly these ones, is making sure that you have the complete overview of all of the different bits of narrative for each team that will go into the cauldron of emotion, either ecstasy or agony. And for both of these teams, for Sunderland, it's 8 years since they were relegated from the Premier League, 7 years since they were relegated from the Championship, youngest team in the Championship this season. For Sheffield United, a lot of scarring from last season, their playoff history as well. I find it really fascinating because on the podcast, I bang on about stuff for 10 minutes at a time because I can just talk for that long and no one can tell me off. I haven't got a doc in my ear telling me to shut up.
Someone should.
But you have to boil that down into, I don't know, it could be a matter of 3 or 4 sentences sometimes.
Yeah, I think, there's obviously a lot of research and preparation that we do, and I love doing it. And you'll speak to as many people as you possibly can. You talk about Sheffield United's playoff record. I did Sheffield United against Cardiff City, which was the Good Friday, I think, and I spoke to Chris Wilder. I have to say, lads, brilliant. He will take your calls. I never ask for the team because I don't want to know the team because I don't want to get in out and then think that it's me. But they'll answer every question. But anyway, I spoke to Chris. I went to the Cardiff City game. Then did them on the Monday against Burnley. That was it. And I spoke to Chris again. And I said, everyone's going, playoffs, no, around the ground. Because that's what everyone was doing. And Chris went to me, right, is that what the feeling is? And I said, that's what I get from this, talking to people at Bramall Lane. You might have to end up in the playoffs. And obviously we know their records. So Chris said to me, right, I'm going to start talking to the players. He said, if it gets into the players and I hear that chat, I'll speak to them about Newcastle winning their first major trophy in however long it was, 50, 60 years. Brentford broke their playoff curse, Preston, etc. So anyway, by the time I spoke to him again, which was before the Bristol City first leg, I said, did you do that? He said, no, because the players weren't talking about it. So everyone else might be, and publicly I'll mention what I did mention, and that's what he said, about the playoff record and how they'll address it. He said, but the players weren't talking about it, so why open a wound that's kind of not necessarily there? So that's how he was playing all that with their record. So again, you have these kind of chats with the managers, you speak to owners, you speak to chief executives, you try and find other little angles, and you do a whole, you're right, you get everything, you go, right, if it goes this way, what does it mean? If it goes that way, what does it mean? I mean, for me personally, I think with Sunderland, if they don't go up, they will lose, I think, quite a few of their players. I think if they go up, they'll probably lose Joe Bellingham anyway, either way, from what you gather. Obviously, Daniel Dodds, Mike's brother, is Borussia Dortmund's chief scout in the UK. So there's a link, but there's other German clubs after him. So, Chris Rigg, Dan Neil, who's been absolutely phenomenal this season, really pushed on as the season's gone on. So you think, if Sunderland don't go up, what will it mean for Sunderland, for example? If Sheffield don't go up, they might lose to likes of Harmer, Souza, whatever. So you're there looking at what it means, the narrative, and, if they go up, this will happen. If they don't go up, this will happen. So, yeah, you've got to try and have all that in your head. You speak to as many people as possible. And then a lot of the stuff you get, you don't use. And you can say it on stuff like this.
With the overflow, we are the overflow car park for Gary Weaver.
I heard you call yourself the media overflow the other day. That's exactly That's exactly what it is. But yeah, and like you say, you've got to try and boil it down. But there's a lot of stuff that we know, or we get from other people that we don't get out there because the game takes over.
I've got a feeling Chris Wilder, not that he needs any more inspiration to win a promotion with Sheffield United, but I think the idea for him of being the person that finally breaks the curse, the playoff curse, would be pretty significant for him.
Plus, it'd be 3 promotions as well, the top of the list of the Sheffield United managers to get promotion. So for him as a United fan, it'll be unreal for him. He won't touch on it now, because when you dip into it with him, he's very much, no, listen, it's just about winning a game of football. But trust me, he'll want his statue built outside as soon as that happens.
He's already marked out the area where he's putting it, hasn't he? I'm joking, Chris.
He's only won one playoff campaign before in his career, and that was in the National League with Oxford. And I was obviously in the Oxford end. And there's his celebration when we went 3-1 up in that game. He runs down the touchline and does a bum slide in front of us, and then immediately does the whole.
Was it more Mourinho or Pleat?
Pleat. I mean, he does that thing where he does the bum slide right in front of us, and then he does that whole calm guys, calm. As he walks back to it's definitely worth digging out. But 2 managers, looking at League One now, Curtis, 2 managers here who, if Chris Wilder wears his heart on his sleeves, I don't know where these 2 wear theirs, but somewhere very visible. We saw Nathan Jones and his very emotional reaction in front of the Sky cameras as the game drew to a close at the Valley against Wickham in the tie that finished 1-0 on aggregate, and wasn't a great watch until that very dramatic moment with Matty Godden scoring the goal. And then Richie Wellens, who again we saw looking a bit stiff as he ran across the pitch at Edgeley Park to celebrate in front of the Stockport fans before he remembered to go back and make sure he shook Dave Challinger's hand. Curtis, you obviously grew up close to Orient. This is a game that's going to mean a lot to both sets of fans.
It will. To touch on Richie, I played with him at Leicester, and that's the quickest I've seen him move. So he was a fantastic footballer. Didn't have to move, which was good. But yeah, all jokes aside, I like the fact Richie had that emotion, because he doesn't usually let himself go. He let that emotion go, but then he did the right thing by going back to Dave Challoner. Dave understands. Dave had enough promotions himself to understand that feeling.
I thought it was really refreshing to see Dave Challoner not get annoyed about it.
Just waiting there, waiting for him. He understands. Yeah. Listen, it's a moment, isn't it? But especially on penalties as well, very emotional. But yeah, I think those 2 managers and the way this game's going to unfold, obviously. I've been to 2 playoff finals to watch Leyton Orient as a fan. I went to, I think it was 1995. I think it was the Scunthorpe playoff final. We lost 1-0 to Scunthorpe. Calvo Garcia scored, and then I went to, a week after losing the FA Cup final, I went to the to the Rotherham final, 2-0 up, Moses of the Bejo, fly in, yep, the O's are going up, and then Alex Ravel turned up. So hopefully it's third time lucky for me being there. I won't be wearing any O shirt or anything. I did want to get one and be down Wembley Way, but I thought if I turn up on the gantry with that, it might not go down well.
Strictly neutral, Curtis.
Yeah, no,
Strictly neutral.
No, but listen,
will you mention on air your allegiance?
I've always in any podcast,
I feel like Carragher and Neville have kind of created a pathway for that to be acceptable.
I think it's one of those. Listen, I always say it like it is. I think. And the thing, if anyone watches me on the EFL, I don't know how many enjoy watching me, but when it's my own team as such, so when I'm doing a derby game or a whole game, I'm usually more critical of them because of my expectancy. So, and almost like wanting a will for them to win kind of thing. Whereas, like I say, when you do these things, especially I'm going to be on the co-coms, I'm analysing what I see. So Weaves is going to be doing his bit, Henders will do his bit, and then I'll jump in with my little snippets here and there. So it's easy for me to just focus on what is going on rather than building a narrative in my head that I can talk at half time to try and, protect Richie, he's my mate, or protect the club that I grew up close to, I had a season ticket at. No, it's not about that. It's about, if I don't do my job, then, I'm going to be letting myself down. So whilst, there's obviously invested interest in Leyton Orient, I'm obviously just looking forward to a good game of football. Well, I say good game of football. I'm not sure it's going to be that. I think it's going to be a bit of a chess match, a bit of a sticky one, where maybe set pieces will come into it. But at the same time, everything to play for. It's Wembley. You've got to enjoy it when you're there as a group of players, as a group of fans. Obviously, both teams being from London, I expect it. Even though obviously Leyton Orient have been in the lower leagues for a long time, Charlton have been at the top. I expect, obviously, probably close to a sellout for that League One, that final. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the noise there, but I'll have to just put my O's badge away for the day and just see what happens in the game.
When Omar Beckles rises up at the back post and heads Leyton Orient 1-0 up in the 94th minute, all ears on that co-coms mic to see what comes through.
No, I'll just do what Weaves did and just leave the silence. But in the background we go.
It's cool that you guys will be up there together for this one. Gary, I think I'm right in saying that there's obviously yourself and your peers, the Sky Sports EFL commentary team. You've got a final each, if you like. I know Stowley did the Virtu Trophy final as well. So this is your playoff final. How many playoff finals will this be for you?
Oh, good question. Probably about 2 last year. It's probably about 12, 13, 14 now, I think.
Amazing. And I mean, firstly, first memory that stands out from a final that you've done comms on?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. The first one probably was the Josh Windass late header, Sheffield Wednesday's winner, simply because of what went before in the semi-final as well, and the fact that they only led for about 2 minutes of the entire playoff campaign, because I did that semi-final against Peterborough as well. Also, do you remember when Southend, Wickham, Phil Brown, Gareth Ainsworth watching in each other's arms, the penalty shootouts? I can't remember if that was my first one or the second one, but
that was all Dreamweaves. That didn't happen.
Oh, do you know what? It was absolutely brilliant. Just had their arms around each other, watching their teams go at it in the penalty shootout. And in that game, Southend had equalised late on, didn't he? And Southend fans had rushed back in. Those that had left. It's all some great memories, and I think every game has a story at some point. As Curtis said, look, the game might not be the best game of football. A lot of players, I'd imagine, play within themselves because of the occasion, and you don't want to be the one to make the mistake, as you were saying before. But there's going to be a story, and you've got to be ready for the story.
And Curtis mentioned set pieces here. Horsfall scored in the first leg for Stockport against Orient. He hit the bar in the second leg from a set piece situation. Charlton have their big beefy centre backs, Lloyd Jones in particular. It's not just defending the attacking threats of the Charlton centre-backs, but for both sides, Gary, VAR in operation here for what will be, the first game of their season with this, but for many of them, it might be the first time they've ever played with VAR in operation. How much of a factor do you think that plays in this?
Yeah, well, we always, I said earlier on that we speak to the managers and head coaches, luckily ahead of games. And so I spoke to Richie Wellens yesterday, speaking to Nathan Jones later. But one of the first questions you ask is, what are you doing about VAR? Now, a lot of managers and head coaches will say, we don't want to put it in our players' heads. this, that, and the other. But also, a large element will say, well, we're going to do a session on it, and we might get a referee in. So Richie, today, actually, they're doing, Orients are doing a VAR session. He said, we're going to have to defend differently. And I was watching Curtis last night flag up that Omar Beckles had been involved in a couple of bits with Stockport. And yet, so, let go quicker if you've got hold of someone, because the cameras are going to be on you. Everything is going to be watched and studied. So, yeah, he said we're going to have to defend differently. And I've heard a few managers, head coaches say that in the past. I'll speak to Nathan later, see his side of it, really. But yeah, I'd probably say from managers I've spoken to, head coaches in these last couple of years since we've had VAR in the final, it's probably maybe 65-35 in terms of, yeah, we will focus on VAR. We will make sure the players know that, again, let go quicker, defend differently is what Richie said to me, which when you've got to start doing that in such a massive game and you've got that element in your head as well, I mean, it's another thing to take on board, which could unsettle you, I suppose.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Curtis? Would you, as a centre-back, be thinking a lot about this before the game, or would you almost want to just be playing automatically without overthinking it?
Fortunately, the way I individually defended, I usually would back myself to win the header. So whilst, I don't want to get blocked off by somebody else or anything like that, I'd always, if I'm man-marking, here's my man, I've got a hand on him, but I'm just focusing on winning the header. So if I, unfortunately, get under it and he scores, I have to take it on chin, but I'm focusing on winning the header. So when we did the piece the other day, like I say, it's putting Omar in the spotlight as the one that did it, but it is a different way of defending. You have to have a different way. So like I say, whilst I didn't do it, if that's Omar's way and he's got away with it all season in League One, he can't get away with it in the final. So it is an adaptation phase. So he has to get to grips with the fact that, yes, he's big, he's strong, he can head it, but is it you face the ball and you maybe grip him a little bit, you maybe get away with it a little bit more? But the two that I analysed yesterday on the preview show, he literally is, the ball's coming, he's looking this way, and literally they were both full-on headlock clotheslines, WWE, Booker T, like full-on going down. So there was no doubt about it in my mind. If a VAR looks at that, then they're going to obviously give it. And the other thing is, with that, being a defender, you're more likely to lose from it, whereas the strikers can gain from it. So at the same time of telling your defenders be careful, I'd be encouraging my strikers, be cute. Be cute. If he catches your foot and he steps on your ankle and you go flying down, it might only be a soft one, but when it's slowed down by VAR, it might end up being a penalty. So there's different levels to it, and that's not. Listen, it's not trying to get people to cheat, but unfortunately, we've seen so many VAR decisions across the Premier League, across Champions League, where you're like, really, that's a penalty, or really, that's a foul, so it doesn't count as a goal, whatever it is. So you have to use the VAR for what it is, and I think, whilst Richie will have to concentrate mainly on those set pieces because that's where they've struggled, I think the attacking element of it as well, with, for instance, Hellman, in the first leg of the Stockport game, he had one where, again, might have been soft on the day if it was given, but he gets his ankles clipped. It's a penalty for me. So I think that's why VAR plays a totally different part in the final. I think it's unfortunate for these players that they have to go all the way through a season and then have it thrown at them in the most important game of the season. But yeah, it definitely is. It's all high stakes, so that's why they've brought it in.
League Two on Monday will see Walsall play against Wimbledon. For both sides, a promotion would be, for both clubs, I should say, not just the teams themselves and the players, but for both clubs, promotion would be absolutely huge. Gary, I know you did the Wimbledon semi-final first leg, didn't you?
Yeah.
How do you think about them approaching a big game like this and how they shape up?
Yeah, I think obviously the defensive record is phenomenal, which everyone focuses on correctly. I mean, that game I did at Notts County, Owen Goodman was fantastic, wasn't he? And Alex Bass made a fantastic save in that game as well, didn't he, in the first leg? But I spoke to Ivor Heller, the great Ivor Heller. I always speak to Ivor, he's brilliant. Before that first leg, and he's so enthusiastic. He was actually watching the Coventry first leg, so watching Jack Redoni when I rang him. So he told me to go away and kill them back later. And yeah, so I mean, look, Ivor was saying the budget this season was 14th in League Two, but not a lot between them and the top end. And I think, to be honest, Ivy didn't say this to me, but I got the feeling there's a lot of pressure on Johnny Jackson this season to get Wimbledon out of the league. And I think the feeling was, or is, that they could have gone up automatically and maybe should have gone up automatically. They felt the squad was good enough for that. So Johnny, he's improved them year on year, hasn't he, Johnny Jackson, since he's been in there. They've played a lot of pressure games. The Grimsby game, the final day, when he was up in the stands, Johnny, wasn't he? And then they ended up dropping Sam Hutchison off a hospital on the way back from that game, didn't they? Which was quite incredible. But yeah, and then they obviously, the one who won at Notts when, Notts County could easily score a couple of goals in that game, couldn't they? But then Wimbledon did what they did in the second leg. So again, I think it'll be a tight game. They always are. But if you look at the two games between the two this season, Walsall won one, the other one was drawn. Not many goals. Wimbledon don't concede many goals. So yeah, and I was also there in 2016. Did the game when they went up against Plymouth Argyle, which one of my, actually, you mentioned playoff memories before. Do you remember the Akin-Fenwar interview with David Craig after the game? Yeah. Which was quite extraordinary. Yep. Quite extraordinary. It was brilliant. So yeah, that was brilliant, a great occasion for them. Yeah, I know. It was, honestly, hit me up, Jurgen. He said, Jurgen Klopp. But yeah, it was just... that was a fantastic day for Wimbledon. But what they've done this season, like I say, defensively, absolutely phenomenal from what they've done. Obviously not on the same rails as Burnley, but not far off. And it was interesting. I was talking to Danny Cowley because, again, League Two, League One at the weekend, I try and phone a manager who's not involved and get a feeling for the league and what they think. And gone up against both teams. So I spoke to Danny Cowley, actually. And he was saying about Owen Goodman. He said, look, we had him obviously at Colchester last season. I had to take him out the firing line towards the end of the season. But he's kind of made his mistakes with us. Look, he's only young. I think that was his first loan last season, wasn't it? This now is second at Wimbledon. And he said, I'm so proud to see what he's done with Wimbledon. See, he's kind of made his mistakes with us. Took him out the firing line because we felt we had to. And he's really pushed on. And that's why I was, nothing against Notts County. I like Notts County too. But I was made up to see him make, in action and make those saves and have a huge part to play. Because he did have a bit of a tough time last season for a young lad.
Curtis, talking about Walsall now for a second, and we've spoken a lot about Walsall over the course of the season.
They've done you, Walsall, haven't they? Been toying with you too?
Oh my god! But they, for 6 months they were the best team in the league by miles. They then, for whatever reason, turned into one of the worst teams in the league in terms of their performances. But we've seen, and we've spoken about this a lot on the pod, we've seen this happen before, where teams not necessarily squander a 12-point lead at the top of the table in January, but come incredibly close to winning automatic promotion before that's taken away from them. It happened with Northampton. We spoke to John Brady about this on the pod last week when they saw Bristol Rovers beat Scunthorpe 7-0 on final day. We saw it with Accrington, again Bristol Rovers scoring at the death, Darryl Clark crying on the pitch, but Accrington thinking they were up and then dropping out the top three. Normally, when this happens, the team that have been dealt that crushing blow really struggles to perform in the playoffs. How impressive was it from a players and management perspective for them to kind of forget not just what happened on final day, but what happened for the last 4 months and put in the level of performance that we saw over two legs in their semis?
Yeah, it was crazy because obviously being Mr. Midlands and having played for every club bar Walsall, I obviously keep a close eye on it and it's amazing what's happened to the club in terms of how they were flying. Nobody ever expected them to be up there. There was no expectancy for them to be right amongst it, and the fact that they were so far clear, you're thinking it's going to be a cakewalk now. Then they lose Nathan Lowe. Then obviously, unfortunately, he was a fantastic player, but they had other fantastic players. But then when you don't have that focal point to maybe rely on sometimes, when the chips are down, and it just seemed to go on a downward spiral, and then, like I say, I think it was it 13 games without a win? And then when they finally do get that win on the last day, they actually think they're still going to scrape up. And that shows how good the start to their season was, that they'd gone all those games without winning. They get that win against Crewe, and they're just waiting to be confirmed as going up until Bradford had other ideas. And whilst it is very, very hard to take in terms of that last moment, that 90 plus 6, I think they know the damage had already been done with what they'd done before. So I think they'd kind of focused on the way they're going to do things. Maybe even, I don't know if Sads did, but maybe planted the idea of playoffs into the players' heads. Like, listen, we have to do it. Whichever way we have to do it, we're going to do it right. And then what he did say is, when I spoke to him in the tunnel on Friday, is he said he's just told him, forget about it. He goes, we have been a good team for the majority of this season. He said, so whilst we didn't get what we wanted to get, at the start of the season, they all would have snatched your hand off for fourth. So context in football is all about the moment, I get it, but at the start of the season, they all just snatched their hands off. So he kind of reminded them of how well they've done this season, put that confidence into them, and they were coming up against the only team that are actually stepping into the playoffs in League Two with form. Chesterfield had won 8 out of 10. And they absolutely were fantastic in terms of being clinical in the first leg, penalty, and then great finish from Alfie Chang. And in the second leg, I thought they were really good value. I thought, knowing Cookie, the way he goes about things, I thought it was going to be, honestly, I thought it was going to be the Alamo. But Walsall were more than value. And then,
if anything, it was the Alamo the other way for the first 10, wasn't
exactly. And they were brilliant. So I don't know if it was almost like a reverse psychology, and Sads thought, right, let's get in their faces, let's see what they do, because they had a 2-0 lead, and maybe felt, if we can get a third goal early, then we can go to our defensive shape. It didn't quite happen that way, but in the end, they get the result. Uncle Albert Adoma comes on, does his little bit of magic, and it just shows. But
amazing.
When you've got that quality and that quality and that experience that can come on off the bench as well later on in the game, and then ends up getting them 2 goals, you know, especially at League Two level, Adoma's a fantastic player. Obviously, might not have the energy and the legs as much as before, but he's still got the snake hips. Obviously, he showed it a couple of times against Chesterfield. But it's really, really interesting, and it's going to be a really interesting game to see, because both teams want to allow the other team to have the ball. So it's almost, is it going to be one pass it to them and then they pass it back, and then, you know, we don't want it, you have it. So that's where the chess match is kind of going to happen. But I think there's going to be a moment in the game where the game just opens up, and I'm not saying it's going to be a goal fest, but there's going to be chances, there's going to be bits and bobs, and I think it will end up being a good game.
George, last year's playoffs we had the reverse mullet, popularised by Des Buckingham. I think from Curtis there we've just got a new phrase, which is the reverse Alamo. You and him just worked that one out. Reverse Alamo. Yeah, I mean, the way that both teams defended their leads in such a way, in what is a pressure environment, but did so basically quite a front-footed way. I absolutely love seeing that, because, you know, the natural psychological instinct, and we've, you know, it's a fact of football history, is that teams who have something to defend often, you know, forget the performance level that took themselves to there in the first place. Also, George, as a quick aside, Curtis said something in there which was, context in football is all about the moment. I actually think that's one of the best things anyone's ever said on the podcast. Is the sort of thing we've been trying to verbalise for about 9 years. Is like trying to, as neutrals, understand where fans' judgment comes from a place of emotion and heightened feeling in the moment, and trying to contextualise it from a neutral point of view, and trying to give some rational overview of it. With Walsall, it's been very, very difficult to do that over the last few months, I think it's fair to say. Look, guys, you guys have got plenty of prep to do. Curtis, I know you're doing all 3 days, 2 pitch side, 1 in the gantry with Gary for League One. Just I think, with apologies to Gary, I think like commentators' preparation is something that has been explained quite well, like the meticulous nature of how you and your peers prepare for and present your own notes so that you can be as sharp as you always are in the moment. It is an incredible thing in and of itself. But I don't think many people, Curtis, have spoken about preparation from a pundit's point of view, where you are going to be talking about 6 teams this season, and by the job's very nature, you will have covered some of their games live for Sky, and you will have already done some preparation. But you also have to make sure that you are absolutely bang at it for these big occasions. So, like, it sounds like from both of your point of view, talking to people involved with the clubs, talking to people from other clubs who might have played against them this season, I really love that is something that adds to the flavour of the kind of picture that you guys get. But on a sort of tactical point of view, is it a case of using something like Y-Scout to have a look at the way that teams attack, the way that teams defend? If I said, right, you've got 2 hours now to start your prep for League Two playoff final, where do you start? How do you like to do it to build a picture?
So the way I do things, so in terms of, if I talk about the co-coms first, what Gary and the rest of his peers as commentators do is unreal. The meticulous notes, the little thing where it was his dog's birthday yesterday and he's looking like, they come up with the most amazing lines, and you're like, where have you found that stat, or where have you found that little note? So you leave those kind of things to Gary. But what I try to do when I do co-coms is I prepare for a bore fest. Because if I prepare for a bore fest, then I know I'll have little stats that can build a narrative. So if it's going to be boring and both teams have been boring, we say, well, no wonder it's been boring because both teams have only scored 2 goals between them in the last 5 games, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of build a narrative that way. Or if it is boring, but both teams have scored lots of goals, you say, oh, I'm surprised that they've done this because they've scored so many goals, blah, blah, blah. So you always prepare that side, because even though it's TV and the action speaks for itself compared to radio, you still need to have a voice here and there. We can't just stand there and kind of look at each other and think, oh, this is boring. So when it comes to that, I kind of prepare lots of little stats, as well as, like I say, things to do with the players. So if you're talking about a player, he scored 10 goals this year, this will be his 11th goal, or a special milestone in terms of on his 200th game. I do all that kind of stuff. When it comes to the panel stuff and pundit stuff, so for instance, doing the games this week will actually be quite easy. I know it sounds silly because I'm only focused on 2 teams, and having been part of the Sky team now, I get a bit of production value. So, for instance, my producer might call me and say, who do we want to speak about? Who do we want to highlight? Who do we want to focus? And like you say, with Y-Scout and things like that, I might be able to go on and prep a 2-3 minute segment about a player, about a defence, about whatever I wanted to talk to. I'm able to do that. I've got that power now. But it's a lot easier simply because you're only focusing on 2 teams. When we do the Saturday show, we are focused on one game in terms of our actual live game that's going out. But because we have, it's been 6 recently, but at the start of the season we're having 7 games going out at 12:30 in the morning. I have to prep for my game, but then I have to have potentially a Johnny Jackson from AFC Wimbledon will be zooming into the studio, and then a Richie Wellens will be zooming in, then a player from a championship. So you've got to prep actually to know what's going on in all 6 of those games. So at least you can be slightly across it when you're asking those questions and getting the feedback. So I'd actually say the playoff bit is quite easy. One, because you've got a body of a season to go over, and you can literally, for instance, a narrative with Charlton and Leyton Orient is quite simple. Charlton have scored late goals against Leyton Orient to win all of the games, and 2 of those against Leyton Orient were from set pieces, which Leyton Orient have struggled with. So that just paints my picture straight away. And it's not that you're going to be lazy, but if that does happen on the day, you kind of not the I told you so. I'm the great knowing everything. It's just a case of you prepare yourself to kind of what maybe is going to be the fine margins of the game. And if it goes that way, it goes that way. But if it doesn't, you just analyse the action. And because I've been a player, I know the game. I'm analysing action and analysing. Usually I'll try and analyse the defensive action and allow my co-pundit to do the attacking action if it's an attacker particularly. But yeah, it's just about balancing and just making sure that you know the players first and foremost. It's just about, like I say, doing your due diligence. You don't like to overload it because you have watched these teams a lot this season, and you try and, like I say, work out who the most important players are, where the spark's going to come from, and trying to work that angle. But sometimes it might be the unfancied left back or right back that ends up getting the winner, and it's an even better story then, because whilst he wasn't the one that we built up, we know all about him, and we might be able to get a nice touching story for that.
Gary, how many people do you call in the lead up to every playoff final?
Well, listen, managers, as we said before, chief executives. Sometimes you go like, yeah, dogs. Is it your birthday? Was it your birthday yesterday? Do you know what that? And obviously, as we said, manager before, that has been involved in the league. Ian Barraclough, I might speak to it. I'm going to try and speak to Ian about Ethan Galbraith because I used to do Northern Ireland. And
I'm a bit offended you don't call us, to be honest. Thinking about it.
I just listen to your pods.
It's
there then, isn't it?
Okay.
That's why I know that Walsall is toyed with you. And that's why I know that Ali is called Media Overflow. But but yeah, so you do all that, and then to be honest, once the game's underway, it kind of hopefully takes care of itself once you're up and running.
Well, yeah, I mean, from all the EFL fans, thank you for the work you put in over the course of the season. Both play massive parts in our enjoyment of it, and yeah, I mean, it's been a hell of a season, and looking forward to seeing how it plays out this coming weekend. So thank you both for joining us on the show today, and yeah, Sky Sports is the place to watch all 3 playoff finals coming up on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Started the Championship, League 1 on Sunday, League 2 on Monday. Curtis is going to be there for all 3. Gary, you're doing League One and Championship.
I'm doing League One, commentating, and then I'm going to attend League Two.
Okay, well, we might see you at the bar at League Two. We might see you at the bar.
Last time I saw you two individually was at bars. So
at bars. We spend a lot of time at bars.
Yeah, there's a good chance that might happen.
Thank you both. Enjoy the weekend, and hopefully we'll see you both there.
Cheers, gents.
And thanks for taking the time to join us on the pod.
Thank you.